Hey Booktube, it's Tara. Thank you for joining me again for Weekend Reads. This past week I finished a total of 5 books and I will try to do some very quick reviews of them. So the first book is called Confessions of a Token Black Girl by Danielle Small. And this was an Audible original that I listened to, very short book, and it chronicles Danielle's life in a very honest and comedic way about being the only Black girl in her class, in her school, in her circle, in the state of Wisconsin, and the microaggressions, the racisms, things of that nature that she had to deal with. So not anything necessarily eye-opening, as I would assume she would have experienced a lot of the, white people wanting to touch her hair or being called the N-word under somebody's breath, things of that nature that she chronicles. She also goes on to tell how she ends up dating and marrying a white man, having a biracial child, and the experiences behind that. So I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. It was good. And again, short, Audible original. If you have an Audible account, I would check it out. Next book I finished was Greenlights, which is a memoir, autobiography of Matthew McConaughey. This book I wrote in my review is Matthew's testament story and what he is leaving behind for now. So this happened to be a lot better than I thought it would be. I don't necessarily follow Matthew McConaughey. This was a buddy read that I did with a friend of mine. So I did go into this book blind, not knowing what to expect. And green lights are points in Matthew's life where his circumstances and his choices aligned to where he was able to benefit from, learn from, grow, and be put in positions to where he is today, so to speak. So I really didn't know if this would be strictly a memoir or one of those books that, or autobiographies that people write to give words of wisdom to the reader, and what you get is a healthy dose of both of those. There's nothing necessarily that you haven't heard before as far as the wisdom is concerned, and you do get a good insight into kind of behind the scenes of how certain characters were chosen for him to play in certain movies, or certain lines or ad-libs that were said in certain movies. If you follow his movies, how those particular instances came to be. I would recommend this book if you are a fan of Matthew McConaughey. He does narrate it himself. I listened to it on Audible. I also read along in the Kindle version of it. The Audible version is very animated, and he gets very spirited at times in the stories that he's telling, but overall, very good book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next short listen on Audible was a story called Dispossession by Tayari Jones. She is also the author of An American Marriage. You may know her from there. She did a short story narrated by Gabrielle Union, chronicling the life of a Black mother and her story of being dispossessed, or disposition meaning you are evicted, so to speak, from your home due to not paying the rent. So I wrote in my review that this was a short and complicated story about what it means to be a Black mother raising a Black son, because there's also that storyline as well where the main character has a Black son and she makes the decision to send him away to school in order for him to get out of the ghetto, receive a better education, and be in a better environment, and how that environment ends up molding her son and taking him away from what he has come to know and what he would have been used to or would have been accustomed to living in the ghetto, so to speak. And because mom and dad, who are divorced, decided to stay in the urban environment that they were in and displace their son into a more white, seemingly better environment, the stress and the almost like the disposition of what happens between mother and son, because when he comes back to visit with his mom, there is tension, there is not necessarily a kinship anymore, and she's realizing, you know, did I make the right decision in doing this? Also, she is in a position financially where her job, even though she's highly educated, has been displaced. So now she has to work in a position where she goes into people's homes to displace them, pack up their things, and get them out of the house because they're being dispossessed. So short audible story, shows the consequences of your choices that, you know, you make as a Black mother, being put in certain positions, and doing what you feel is best at the time and what that means. Gabrielle Union did an excellent job narrating. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I did enjoy it. Again, it is a short read on Audible, and it is included. A lot of these books that I have listened to are included in the membership, so I didn't necessarily have to use a credit to download and listen to them. I don't think I necessarily have a special membership. I think it's one of those things where, you know, you get like Audible originals. So there's that. Next book I finished was a book called Ghachar, Ghochar by Vivek Shanbhag, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. So this book is hard to explain, but from what I understand, the gist of the story, and it is a short book, is there is a poor family who comes into money, and how that money now has changed the family in ways that they don't see or recognize. It's almost as if they forget where they have come from. And I say that because, again, looking from the inside out, they don't see how they've changed. They don't see how they were once a close-knit family that communicated and sat at the table at dinner and were mindful of their items, their belongings, their expenditures. They watched what they spent. They watched their budget. They made do, and they were happy, in essence, with the environment that they were in previous to coming into the money. And then once the money showed up in this family, it, you know, became almost like a separateness amongst each other. You know, no one was necessarily communicating anymore, and money was being spent frivolously, and just how the relationships deteriorated based on this newfound wealth. The term Ghachar, Ghochar, is not necessarily a real word, but you would have to know, or no, you would have to read the book in order to understand what that term means and how it fits into the storyline itself. 3 out of 5 stars. This was actually a book I heard Ashley at Bookish Realm talk about on her channel, which enticed me to want to read it. This was a book that was translated, I believe, from its original language, which I'm not sure what that is. However, it was a good read. I wouldn't read it again. It was kind of a weird story, but overall good. And so the last book that I finished just today is a book called The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr. This book, I believe, just came out this month in February. And I'll read my review. Framed by chapters named after the Bible and glimpses of visions and whispers from spirits, this beautiful prose tells the story of 2 men taken from their family as children to live and work on a plantation in the Deep South. Their secret love for one another and the threat of that love being exposed is what moves this story. This book combines spirituality, history, magic into one glorious story of love between two souls who were destined from before their incarnation. So it tells of a love story between two men in the Deep South on a plantation. And there's magic in this book, there's spirituality. Like I said, almost every chapter in this book is named after a Bible chapter. And toward the end of the book, one of the chapters is actually framed in such a way where you have chapter 1, verse 1, chapter 1, verse 2, chapter 1, verse 3. So again, it's rooted in religion and spirituality and history and ancestral magic and blood memory and how all that ties together. It also has another timeline with that's weaved into the story that talks about King Akusa, who is a female, which I know there were female kings way back when, but we don't hear a lot about the women that ruled lands and that were fierce warriors, and how King Akusa her land and her tribe was infiltrated by, I forget what she calls them, but she looked at these white people as being diseased because she'd never seen skin that was not melanated. So in essence, it's telling the story of how white people came down from the mountains, infiltrated this tribe, and basically running with the story of slavery and capturing people, putting them on ships, bringing them over to the Americas plantations. So 5 out of 5 stars. This book was beautifully written. First book that I have read by this author. I'm not sure if he's written anything else, but if this is his first book, masterpiece. Bravo. I have not seen a bad review on this book yet, and deservedly so. What I am picking up this week, I was just given through my library systems Cicely Tyson's book, Just As I Am, and I just started listening to that today. I am still waiting on receiving the ebook or Kindle version of it so I can read along as well. Also, I just saw that my library systems has given me the ebook of Concrete Rose by Angie Thomas, so hopefully I'll get to dive into that as well. I'm also still very slowly reading A Promised Land by Barack Obama and annotating that, and I think that's all the books that I will be picking up this coming week. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you like my content, or if you like hearing me talk about books and my thoughts on them. Please like the video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.